All right, we are back here on the podcast, getting ready for championship week in college basketball here. Joining me today, a great guest. You've heard him call Big East games on Fox for years. He's called some Iona games on ESPN Plus. He's also the reason this podcast exists for you longtime listeners. Vin Parise is here from Fox. Vin, how are you?
Good. Thank you for the kind words, my friend Mike. And, credit to you as a young guy up and coming in this business to stay focused and keep your podcast rolling. That's what it's all about, is perseverance.
Yeah, absolutely here. And obviously, this is one of my favorite times of the year is we got championship week this week, March Madness, Selection Sunday coming up here. So obviously, you've been tapped in this season. What's your general thoughts on what we've seen from college basketball this year?
I think I think it's going to be a great tournament. College basketball this year, Mike, doesn't have that, crazy, star power or, doesn't have that guy who, like we've seen in recent years, with Kentucky, what have you. But I think it's going to be a great year. I still think it was an awesome season in college hoops as this portal and NIL era begins. Zach Edey's going to be the first player since Ralph Sampson in '84 to win back-to-back National Player of the Years. I also think the phenomenon of the Caitlin Clark story and Pistol Pete's record on the women's side has overshadowed a little bit. But I think when we get through this championship week and, this field of 68 comes out, I think you're going to see very, very highly competitive games. I do think that there is a little bit of a separation when you look at Purdue and you look at UConn and you look at some of the other high seeds. I don't know if it's going to be a crazy, Florida Atlantic, old school Butler type Final Four where someone just totally comes out of nowhere. But I think there's going to be some great competitive games in this year's tournament. Especially when you get, to that second weekend of the Sweet 16 on and in.
Yeah, sure. I feel like the trend this year I noticed here is feel like top 10 teams losing on the road to unranked teams occur way more than I've ever seen.
Oh, there's no doubt about it because, listen, parity is a cliche term in college hoops, but there was a lot of unknowns this year. And, you got to remember this, the rankings are definitely skewed. Because of the unknown of the portal. So we need to get, ourselves into a framework to where preseason top 25 rankings and preseason coaches polls are not going to mean much. Because there's just so many unknowns with the portal now. UConn was picked to come in third in the Big East this year. Seton Hall was picked to come in ninth. Michigan State was top 5. So in the country. So, I think when you add that level of, the unknown, and now more and more so than ever, it's so difficult to win a road game, especially a conference road game this day and age in conference hoops, if you have experience. And I think the portal has shown us that, it's tough to see freshmen and sophomores out there playing huge minutes these days, like the juniors, seniors, and grad students.
Yeah, that's for sure here. And let's stay local for a little bit here. I want to start with the Big East, with obviously the headline for New Yorkers here is year one for Rick Pitino at St. John's. And obviously they get off to the good start. They have that weird stretch in February. They lose a bunch of games and they blow all the second half leads. Rick rips his team publicly, and all of a sudden they get hot down the stretch, win their last 4 games. Now are the 5 seed the Big East tournament. So what's your take on what you've seen for year one for Pitino at St. John's?
Well, it's well documented. He had that rant in the press conference, but I could tell you this, that definitely got overblown and overhyped. I mean, from being fortunate enough to be close to the program as part of their radio team, with John Minko and Brandon Tierney, and traveling with them a lot and doing a lot of games. I could tell you that their camaraderie between the coaching staff and players internally was always strong and great. I think Coach wanted to publicly apologize to the fan base, but I could tell you this. I mean, the 3 weeks leading up to that, he was saying over and over again to John Minko on the pregame shows about how they were slow laterally and not athletic. He was just stating why they were losing games. It wasn't personal attacks. But listen, he's a mastermind at this. He's one of the best to ever do it. He knew that it would motivate the guys. He knew it was guys that would take it as a challenge, and they haven't lost since. And, say what you want, but think about it. They were preseason picked to come in top 5. There's no way they were finishing above the top 3 of Marquette, Creighton, and UConn anyway. And despite going 2-8 in a 10-game stretch during the most important time of the year, they still somehow finished in the top 5. So, he had an empty locker room. He had to build a roster from scratch around Joel Soriano. And, he showed why he's a Hall of Fame coach. No one wants to play them at Madison Square Garden next week. And a 6 seed's not going to want to play them as an 11 seed if they got through their playing game in Dayton. And I could tell you with what I'm hearing out there in the world of college hoops, Mike, that, through the portal and NIL, their roster is even going to be at another level next year in year 2. So I think St. John's basketball fans are in for a fun ride.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure they're excited to hear that one here. I think to be excited here is the UConn fans, because obviously they win the national title last year. They kind of get slept on after a lot of guys leave, and then all of a sudden they sort of have this run from December after they lose to Kansas until early March. They look like the best team in the country. They have a couple of losses here down the stretch, sort of stumble a little bit here. But do you feel like UConn's the team to beat right now in terms of just pure dominance heading into March Madness?
No doubt about it. I mean, I think that Purdue has the most dominant matchup in college hoops with Zach Edey. But, as we've seen the last couple of years with the upsets of FDU and St. Peter's, I think there's ways to combat that. And I think it puts pressure on the other guys, whether they're going to show or not. I think UConn's just the most complete team. I mean, I can't find the weakness. They rebound the basketball. They defend. They shoot the heck out of it from deep. They have elite point guard play. They have size. They have strength. They have elite coaching on the sideline. They're tough. They're gritty. They have experience. They pass the ball great. They have so many three-point threats that play around clinging on the inside with major size. It's remarkable to lose that much from last year's championship team and, in essence, kind of be better on paper is scary. And they haven't won the Big East tournament since 2011. They haven't been a number 1 seed since 2009. And this is definitely the best shot, Mike, in all of college hoops that we've seen at a team having best shot at repeating since Billy Donovan's 06, 07 Florida Gators, for sure.
Yeah, excited to see how they do here. Also excited for Seton Hall because obviously year 1 with Shaheen Holloway was obviously a bit tougher because he was trying to set his program in here. They picked 9th preseason this year in the Big East polls, and right now they enter the Big East tournament, the 4 seed. They have a lot of good wins. You feel like that they're probably good regardless of what happens with St. John's. Although you'd love to win that game, but what do you think about the situation here with Seton Hall, what they've done this year under Coach Holloway?
Yeah, I mean, Shaheen's a great buddy of mine. As you know, we were assistant coaches and roommates together during the Kevin Willard years. And I really think if Dan Hurley didn't go 18-2 in conference play, I think, Shaheen Holloway, would be your Big East Coach of the Year. He's done an unbelievable job. Reminds me of last year when Shaka Smart and Marquette were picked 9th and finished 2nd. For Shaheen to finish 4th this year and how strong the league was is terrific, especially with the fact that he had a team that only made 4 or 5 3-pointers a game. Gritty defense. What a defensive job he's done. He's gotten Kadari Richmond to play at an elite level with point guard play. I agree. I do think that St. John's needs the game Thursday more than Seton Hall. I think both of them are in, but I think that St. John's would have to sweat it out a little bit more and pay attention to those other bubble teams a little bit more. I think Seton Hall, regardless, is in the field. I think this game would be icing on the cake more for St. John's. But I got to tell you this. Yes, it's tough to beat a team 3 times, but Seton Hall has really shut down St. John's in the first 2 matchups. Granted, one week it was wacky, and they all had COVID. And then the other week, obviously, was the turning point of their season, and the press conference ran. But Seton Hall is so difficult to score on in the half court, Mike, that this 4-5 game at 2:30 Thursday at MSG, I think is going to be one of the best games of the tournament.
Yeah, for sure here. And I want to get to that tournament here because I'm looking at the bracket right now. Obviously, we have the 4-5 game locked in here. UConn's the one. They have a pretty decent shot to get deep into this thing. The bottom of the bracket intrigues me a lot, because especially you got Creighton, who might get a shot from a Providence team that really needs a win to try and get themselves into the bubble mix here. And Marquette, with the 3, may not have Tyler Kolek. They have Villanova, get Villanova in the 3-6 game here. And Nova has beaten a lot of great teams, lost some weird teams here. So what are your headlines looking for from this tournament?
Yeah, I don't want to take anything away from, Wednesday or Thursday. I do think it's going to be fun to see Ed Cooley go against his old team, the Friars. But I really think, Mike, when you get to Friday night, expect chalk. I really think you're going to see UConn. You're going to see the winner, obviously, of the 4-5 game, and you're going to see Creighton and Marquette. And I think once you get to Friday night, I think it's a coin toss. I think it shouldn't surprise you if any of those 4 teams make it to Saturday night, and it shouldn't surprise anybody if any of those 4 teams were to cut down the nets. I mean, think about it. Seton Hall, beat UConn this year. Creighton and Marquette have taken on all comers. But, St. John's, for all the adversity they went to, they beat Creighton at Madison Square Garden. They lost pretty much at the buzzer at Creighton. They took Marquette down to the final possessions in both games. And could you imagine if St. John's and Rick Pitino make it to the semis Friday night? So I really think that seedings and records and all of that go out the window. We know about UConn's home court advantage at times at MSG. I think it's going to be an unbelievable doubleheader, and it's anybody's Big East championship once you get to Friday. But I would be surprised if a team outside of the top 5 seeds makes it to Friday night.
Yeah, and I feel like that would not be good for the Big East bubble prospects here. I feel like that they're probably right now sitting at 5 teams. The tournament's to end today here. Because any shot we could see a Villanova or a Providence sort of sneak in here, become the 6th of the Big East.
Yeah, and listen, should it anyone that followed the Big East this year would not be completely shocked if a Providence or a Villanova or someone like that made it to Friday night. That's not what I'm saying. I just think that, if I'm a betting man, you really, really, really got to like how those top 5 seeds are playing right now as Big East Conference play ended up. Now, I will say this, Mike. It is crucial for Tyler Kolek, though, to be healthy. If there's one question mark out of the top dogs, it's this oblique injury. Because I truly feel that all 3 need to be good for Shaka Smart to be playing Saturday night again. And that's Cam Jones, Iguodaro, and obviously Tyler Kolek. They sat him out the last couple of games. This is a nice rest. They don't play until late Thursday night. But an oblique injury could be stingy. And it'd be very interesting that if it bothers him Thursday at all, how they give it a go. Because at the end of the day, as great as the Big East tournament is, Shaka Smart knows that the pressure's on to make it to the second weekend. So that is something to keep an eye on if one of the top dogs would get bounced out.
Yes, for sure. Here, let's go to another tournament you're going to, I think, have an eye on here this week. This is the MAC tournament, which obviously there's always all sorts of craziness happening in Atlantic City here. Iona's run the league for a few years. Obviously, down year for them this year. I feel like any of 5 or 6 teams can end up winning this bracket here. What do you think about the MAC tournament?
I think the MAC tournament, time and time again, has shown that it can be wide open. I don't think there's much separation at all when you talk about Tobin Anderson's Iona Gale, Bashir Mason's St. Peter's Peacocks, Niagara, John Dunn's Marist Red Foxes are always tough comes tournament time. I mean, think of last year. I believe Marist was an 11 seed playing, Iona in the championship round. And when St. Peter's made the magical run to the Elite Eight a couple of years ago, they weren't even a 1 seed and won the league. Iona did. So, it's always a fun conference tournament. It's always competitive. I just think it'd be tough to bet against Quinnipiac this year. And I know that there was separation between both Quinnipiac and Fairfield, Mike. As we know, you covered the league close this year. But when I look at Tom Pecora's team's numbers, I mean, those are numbers that you really like to get behind during a conference tournament. And it goes beyond the fact that, Matt Belanc is a first teamer and, right there for player of the year. I'm going beyond personnel. They shoot it at 36% from three. They do not turn the basketball over, only 12 per game. They make 15 free throws a game as a team. They shoot almost 80% as a team from the free throw line. They defend. They've out-rebounded their opponents this year. To me, that's the magic handful of, stat lines you look at. And, that's tough. And I think that's the reason why you saw Quinnipiac so strong in league play this year. Yes, it's important to get good individual performances like Belanc, but you look at those team numbers at both ends of the floor, and that's impressive for the Bobcats.
It certainly is here. And obviously, since you're tapped in a mid-major basketball, I want to get your take on this whole debate coming on now about the mid-majors trying to get the at-large, because obviously a lot of people watched the Missouri Valley Championship game yesterday where Indiana State loses to Drake. They have good metrics. They couldn't really get anybody to play them here. And there's always this debate that happens on tournament times here. Do you want to take the mid-major who plays very well all year, gets tripped up in their tournament, doesn't play anybody, or a bigger team from a bigger league that has lost more games but has played more teams? How do you feel about that mid-major debate every year? They're trying to figure out how to get themselves into the tournament if they don't win their league.
Yeah. Well, it's fun. It's because, that debate in the past has always been, the mid-major fans want the mid-major, the high majors want more teams selected from each league. You can look at it two ways, I mean, in some ways it's just going to flat out lead to the Atlantic 10 getting an extra team, the ACC getting an extra team, and all of that stuff. But, I think metrics is going, and the net is going to help, decipher truly, what resumes deserve it. And remember, you're supposed to be picking the next best set of teams, not really labeling who's the mid-major and who's the high major. Personally, I want to see it stay at, 68. I don't think you're going to see it to go to anything drastic like an 80 or a 90. I wouldn't be surprised in the next, 5 to 7 years. I don't think anything's going to really change between now and I think it's another 6-7 years, that Turner and CBS deal. But I could see one day it going from 68 to 70, 72 and taking a couple more. But I don't think you're going to see it change drastically. But, when you see a Houston leave the American and get criticized, for beating up on, subpar competition, and then they go into, the best league in the country and then dominate the Big 12, the metrics are the metrics and the proof is in the pudding. You have the Missouri Valley yesterday, you had the Indiana State and the Drake story, but how many years does that truly happen? I mean, the last time with the MAC, it was Iona Monmouth from, over a decade ago. So, I mean, at the end of the year, it's going to be about, how strong is that bubble when you come down to the last week of February.
Yeah, for sure. This is my last question. Sort of building on that here. Let's say they said one year, Vin, we want you on the committee this year. So when you're looking at these at-large teams, whether it's the mid-majors, whether it's the 6th team in the Big East or so on and so forth, what's your thing that you want to look at here? I know you said the metrics matter to you. Do you matter who they beat, who you play, how they look? What do you look for when you look at, I want this to be a tournament team, here's why?
Yeah. I would definitely put, let's say I was on the fence between two scenarios, a really, really strong mid-major or a borderline middle of the pack Power 5. To me, Mike, what I would do is, because listen, you can't control your conference is your conference, your league is your league in January and February. I would give the nod personally to, what did you do non-conference and what was your non-conference strength of schedule? You could talk to me about this net and the metrics and beating somebody by 30 and not having a bad loss all you want. I would not reward the big boys playing cupcakes over mid-majors playing the big boys. Now, that doesn't mean you play the big boys and get your head beaten in. If I'm giving a mid-major a nod, that's good that they might have dominated conference play. But if your conference is ranked like, 24th, 25th, 26th in the country at a 33, you got to show me that you won a couple of really tough and impressive non-conference games in November and December. So, the metric to me that's always important is, one, strength of schedule, but then 1A, how did you do in non-conference play?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. But I feel like there's some leagues who are like teams that say, oh, I have a strong league schedule. I don't need to play anybody out of the league. Whereas, like, I give credit to the mids who, like, try and schedule. I know it's hard because some of these big schools say there's nothing to gain from playing them. But, like, if you make an attempt and let's say a team you play like a power league or like a high mid doesn't work out, you still get an attempt for making the schedule. It's not their fault the team flopped. Right.
No, for sure. And, and if I'm going to use a Seton Hall, for example. Say what you want about Seton Hall getting off to that terrific start in Big East play, which really set them up for, staying in the top half of the league throughout. I believe they were 5-1 and in first place by themselves after 6 games of conference play the first 3 weekends. But if you remember, what really turned their run around was that big non-conference win against Missouri. So, yes, it's easy to say if you're in the Big East, well, I'm going to play this many quad ones and I'm going to play this many top 25s. I should be able to play all cupcakes. But, if you think about it, you start getting down to the bubble right now, trust me, like what you did outside of conference play matters, when the committee puts your final numbers up on the board. So, I think it's very risky to just take that as the easy way out.
All right, Vin, thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it. People want to follow social media. Keep up with your thoughts on the college basketball world. You're not going to do that.
Always fun with you, Mike. Thanks for having me on, my friend.
No problem. Thanks for the time, Vin.